Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Betrayal. Jordan Gamble sat in the mahogany-paneled courtroom, his weathered hands clenched into fists as he watched his 22-year-old son, Kevin, standing before the bench. His boy, looked so small in that orange jumpsuit, shoulders trembling as Judge Harold Wyatt prepared to deliver the sentence. Jordan had built his reputation as one of Chicago's most feared private investigators over 25 years. He tracked down missing persons, exposed cheating spouses, and gathered evidence that had destroyed careers and lives. But none of that mattered now. His son had been framed for armed robbery, and despite Jordan's best efforts to prove Kevin's innocence, the evidence seemed ironclad. Kevin Gamble, Judge Wyatt's voice boomed through the courtroom. The prosecution has painted you as a repeat offender despite this being your first conviction. Taking into account the alleged gang connections and the severity of crime, Jordan's jaw tightened. There were no gang connections. Kevin worked at a garage and went to community college. The prosecutor, Edgar Rush, had somehow manufactured evidence that made his clean-cut son look like a hardened criminal. I hereby sentence you to 8 years in state penitentiary. The gavel came down like a gunshot. 8 years. Jordan felt his world tilt. The standard sentence for first-time armed robbery was 3 to 4 years. His father-in-law, his own wife's father, had just doubled his grandson's sentence. Jordan turned to his wife, Maxine, expecting to see the same shock and outrage he felt. Instead, her face was cold, almost satisfied. When she noticed him looking, she leaned close and whispered, "He deserves a death penalty for what he's put this family through." The words hit Jordan like ice water. His wife of 26 years, the mother of his child, had just wished death upon their son. Jordan said nothing, but something fundamental shifted inside him. The man who had spent decades reading people, catching lies, and uncovering betrayals suddenly realized he'd been blind to the greatest deception of all. As Kevin was led away in shackles, casting one desperate look back at his father, Jordan made his first mental note: find out why Harold Wyatt really doubled the sentence, and find out why his own wife seemed pleased about it. The courtroom began to empty, but Jordan remained seated, his mind already working. 25 years of investigation had taught him that when something didn't make sense, it was because you didn't have all the pieces. The way Edgar Rush had avoided his eyes during the trial. The way Maxine had been working late more often in recent months. The way Judge Wyatt had seemed almost reluctant to look at Kevin during sentencing. As Jordan finally stood to leave, he caught sight of Edgar Rush and Maxine talking in hushed tones near the prosecutor's table. Rush placed his hand briefly on her lower back, a gesture too intimate for mere acquaintances. In that moment, Jordan understood. His wife wasn't just betraying their son. She was betraying him. The private investigator in Jordan kicked into overdrive. Rule 1, gather intelligence before acting. Rule 2, your enemy doesn't know they're your enemy until it's too late. Rule 3, when you strike, you destroy everything. That night, Jordan sat in his home office, staring at photos of his family on the desk. Kevin's graduation photo, their wedding picture, Maxine's last birthday. All lies, he realized. How long had she been sleeping with the prosecutor? How long had she been working with her father to destroy Kevin's life? He opened his laptop and began typing. If Maxine thought she could manipulate the system against his son, she was about to learn what happened when you betrayed Jordan Gamble. Chapter 2, The Investigation. 2 weeks after Kevin's sentencing, Jordan sat in his car outside the downtown law offices where Edgar Rush worked. At 52, Jordan had the patience of a predator and the instincts of a man who'd survived Chicago's mean streets before building his investigation business. He'd been watching Rush for 3 days, learning his patterns, documenting his movements. Rush was 41, divorced, and apparently had a taste for married women. Jordan had already confirmed what he suspected. Edgar and Maxine had been meeting at the Riverside Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 4 months. But Jordan needed more than adultery. He needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal. His phone buzzed with a text from Maxine. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Jordan smiled coldly. She was probably with Rush right now, celebrating their victory over Kevin. His son was already in Stateville Correctional Center, where Jordan's contacts told him the boy was struggling but surviving. Kevin still maintained his innocence, still believed his father would find a way to clear his name. Jordan planned to do exactly that, and so much more. He'd spent his career building a network of contacts throughout Chicago's legal system, law enforcement, and criminal underworld. Judges who owed him favors, cops who'd used his services, criminals who respected his word. It was time to call in every debt. His first stop was Alice Johns, a defense attorney who specialized in appeals. Alice was one of the few lawyers in Chicago who wasn't afraid to take on corrupt prosecutors and judges. She was also someone Jordan had helped out of a bind years ago when her ex-husband had tried to frame her for embezzlement. "Jordan," Alice said, settling into her office chair across from him. "I heard about Kevin. I'm sorry. 8 years seems excessive." It was more than excessive. It was personal. Jordan slid a manila folder across her desk. "I need you to look into something." Alice opened the folder, revealing photos of Edgar Rush and Maxine together, bank records showing unusual deposits in Maxine's account, and a detailed timeline of meetings between Rush and Judge Wyatt. "How did you get bank records?" Alice asked. "You don't want to know." Jordan's voice was flat. "What I want to know is whether you can build a case for prosecutorial misconduct and judicial bias." Alice studied the documents. "This is extensive. But Jordan, even if we can prove an affair and some coordination, overturning Kevin's conviction won't be easy. We need to show they deliberately manufactured evidence or withheld exculpatory evidence. Then that's what we'll find." Jordan leaned forward. "Alice, my son is innocent. My wife and her lover put him in prison to clear the way for their affair and probably to get their hands on my assets. My father-in-law doubled the sentence because Edgar Rush asked him to. I'm going to prove all of it." Alice was quiet for a long moment. "What do you need from me?" "File the appeal. Start making noise about prosecutorial misconduct. I want Edgar Rush looking over his shoulder. And I want you to be ready with paperwork for Kevin's next hearing." After leaving Alice's office, Jordan drove to his next appointment. Buddy Herman ran a security company that specialized in surveillance equipment and information acquisition. Buddy was an ex-cop who'd been forced out for being too aggressive, but he was loyal to the people who treated him right. "Jay Gamble," Buddy said, using Jordan's old street nickname. "Heard your boy got railroaded. What do you need?" "I need Edgar Rush's office bugged. His home, his car, everything." Buddy nodded. "Illegal as hell, but doable. What about your wife?" "Her too. I want to know every conversation, every meeting, every plan they have. This is going to be expensive." Jordan pulled out an envelope thick with cash. "This is just a down payment. I want them to hang themselves with their own words." That evening, Jordan returned home to find Maxine cooking dinner as if nothing had happened. She'd been doing this for weeks, playing the grieving mother while secretly celebrating their son's imprisonment. "How was work today?" she asked, not looking up from a stove. "Productive," Jordan replied. "I'm working on some new cases." Maxine glanced at him. "Nothing that will interfere with Kevin's situation, I hope. Harold says it's best if we don't make waves. Kevin needs to accept responsibility for his actions." Jordan studied his wife's face. Even now, she was lying to him. "Of course not. I just want what's best for our son." Maxine smiled, apparently satisfied. "Good. Edgar stopped by today, by the way. He wanted to check on how we're doing." That was thoughtful of him. "Yes, he's very caring." Jordan excused himself and went to his office. He had calls to make and plans to finalize. Maxine and Edgar thought they were so clever, using the legal system to destroy his family. They had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who'd spent 25 years learning how to destroy people professionally. He opened his laptop and began typing notes. Subject: complete destruction of Edgar Rush and Maxine Gamble. Timeline: for weeks maximum. Methods: all necessary. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 3: the setup. 3 weeks into his investigation, Jordan had everything he needed to begin phase 1 of his plan. Buddy Herman's surveillance equipment had captured hours of incriminating conversations between Maxine and Edgar Rush. The audio quality was crystal clear as Jordan played back their most damning exchange from the previous Tuesday. "Harold came through for us," Edgar's voice said through the speakers. 8 years. The kid won't be a problem anymore. "And Jordan still doesn't suspect anything," Maxine replied. "He's so focused on trying to prove Kevin's innocence. He can't see what's right in front of him. Once we get him to sign the divorce papers, half his assets become yours. Then we can start our new life together. What about the insurance policy? What about it? Jordan's worth more dead than alive, Edgar. Just saying." Jordan had listened to that conversation a dozen times, each replay strengthening his resolve. His wife wasn't just planning to divorce him. She was considering having him killed. And Edgar Rush, the prosecutor who'd railroaded his son, was in on everything. But Jordan had more than just audio recordings. Through his network of contacts, he discovered that Edgar Rush had a gambling problem. The prosecutor owed serious money to some very serious people, specifically Melvin Combs, who ran high-stakes poker games for Chicago's political elite. Edgar had been using his position to feed information to certain defense attorneys in exchange for cash, trying to pay off his debts. Even better, Judge Harold Wyatt had his own secrets. Jordan's investigation revealed that the judge had been taking bribes for lighter sentences in exchange for contributions to his wife's charity, the charity that Maxine helped run. The family connection ran deeper than anyone realized. Jordan was putting together a plan that would destroy all three of them simultaneously when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Kevin's correctional facility. "Dad." Kevin's voice was strained, exhausted. "Kevin, how are you holding up?" "It's hard in here, Dad, but I'm managing. Some of the guys are looking out for me because they know you. Dad, I need you to know I didn't do what they said I did. I was at work when that robbery happened. My boss will vouch for me." "I know, son. I've always known, and I'm going to get you out of there. The appeals process could take years." "It won't take years." Jordan's voice was steel. "Kevin, there's going to be another hearing soon. When it happens, I need you to trust me completely. No matter what you see or hear, remember that your father loves you and will never let anyone hurt you." After hanging up, Jordan made his next call to Alice Johns. "Alice, I need you to request an emergency hearing. File a motion claiming new evidence of prosecutorial misconduct and judicial bias." "Jordan, we've been through this. We need more than. We have more. Much more. Just file the motion and be ready. The hearing is going to be very interesting." Jordan's final call was to Cecil Montgomery, a bail bondsman who owed Jordan several favors. Cecil also had connections to some of Chicago's more entrepreneurial citizens. "Cecil, I need a favor. A big one." "Name it, Jordan." "You saved my daughter's life when you found her after she was kidnapped. I owe you everything. I need you to collect a debt from Edgar Rush. He owes Melvin Combs about $200,000 from poker games. I want you to buy that debt and then apply pressure. Serious pressure. You want him hurt? Not yet. I want him desperate. Scared. Making bad decisions. Consider it done." The pieces were falling into place. Jordan had learned long ago that the key to destroying your enemies was to make them destroy themselves. Edgar Rush was already corrupt. Jordan just needed to expose that corruption at exactly the right moment. Judge Wyatt was already taking bribes. Jordan just needed to prove it. And Maxine was already planning Jordan's death. She just needed to be caught in the act. 2 days later, Jordan received word that the emergency hearing had been scheduled. Edgar Rush would be in court, defending his prosecution of Kevin. Judge Harold Wyatt would be presiding, trying to maintain the facade of his doubled sentence. And Maxine would be there, playing the supportive wife, while secretly hoping her son stayed buried in prison. Jordan spent the evening before the hearing preparing the sealed envelope that would change everything. Inside were bank records showing the bribes to Judge Wyatt's wife's charity, audio recordings of Edgar and Maxine planning Jordan's death, photos of Edgar's gambling debts and the money he'd taken from defense attorneys, and a detailed timeline showing how they'd all worked together to frame Kevin. But the most damaging evidence was a video recording from the night of the robbery. Jordan had finally tracked down the convenience store's security footage that the police had somehow lost. The video clearly showed Kevin at his job across town when the robbery occurred. It also showed the actual perpetrators, two men Jordan recognized as associates of Melvin Combs. The same Melvin Combs who now owned Edgar Rush's gambling debts. Jordan smiled as he sealed the envelope. Tomorrow, his enemies would learn what happened when they betrayed the wrong man's family. And Kevin would finally come home. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The emergency hearing was packed. Jordan sat in the gallery, watching as Edgar Rush took his place at the prosecutor's table, looking haggard and nervous. The man had clearly been under pressure. Cecil Montgomery had done his job well. Maxine sat beside Jordan, playing the role of concerned mother, occasionally dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Judge Harold Wyatt entered looking confident, perhaps even smug. He'd doubled Kevin's sentence and gotten away with it. In his mind, the case was closed. Alice Johns stood to address the court. Your Honor, we have new evidence that calls into question the entire prosecution of Kevin Gamble. Evidence that suggests prosecutorial misconduct, witness tampering, and judicial bias. Edgar Rush shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is clearly a desperate attempt to— Mr. Rush, Alice interrupted, you'll have your chance to respond. But first, I think the court needs to see what we've discovered. Jordan stood and walked toward the front of the courtroom. Every eye followed him as he approached Alice and handed her the sealed envelope. Edgar Rush's face went pale. Judge Wyatt's confident expression began to crack. Mr. Gamble, Judge Wyatt said, his voice strained, you're not an attorney. You can't. I'm a licensed private investigator providing evidence to counsel, Jordan replied calmly. Perfectly legal, Your Honor. Alice opened the envelope and began reading. Her eyes widened as she scanned the documents. Behind him, Jordan heard Maxine's sharp intake of breath. She was smart enough to know this wasn't going according to plan. Your Honor, Alice said, I need to enter several pieces of evidence into the record. First, bank records showing payments from various defense attorneys to prosecutor Edgar Rush in exchange for information about their clients' cases. Edgar Rush looked like he might be sick. Your Honor, this is preposterous. These records are obviously fabricated. Second, Alice continued, audio recordings of conversations between Mr. Rush and Mrs. Maxine Gamble, discussing how they conspired to frame Kevin Gamble in order to clear the way for their adulterous affair. Maxine gasped behind Jordan. He turned to look at her and smiled coldly. The tears in her eyes weren't fake anymore. Third, evidence of payments to Mrs. Dorothy Wyatt's charity in exchange for favorable sentences from Judge Harold Wyatt. Judge Wyatt's face had gone completely white. This hearing is out of order. I'm declaring a recess. Fourth, Alice's voice rose to be heard over the judge's protests. Security footage from the night of the alleged robbery, clearly showing Kevin Gamble at his workplace across town when the crime occurred. The courtroom erupted. Reporters began frantically taking notes. Edgar Rush looked around desperately, as if seeking an escape route. Judge Wyatt was banging his gavel, demanding order. But Jordan wasn't finished. He'd spent 3 weeks planning this moment, and he wanted everyone to understand the full scope of the betrayal. Alice, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chaos, play the recording from last Tuesday. Alice connected her phone to the courtroom's audio system. Suddenly, Maxine's voice filled the room. Jordan's worth more dead than alive. Edgar. Just saying. Edgar's voice followed. Once we get him to sign the divorce papers, half his assets become yours. Then we can start our new life together. The courtroom fell silent. Jordan turned to face his wife, who was now openly sobbing. 26 years of marriage, Maxine, and you were planning to have me killed. Jordan, I can explain. No need. Jordan's voice was ice. I heard everything. Every conversation. Every plan. Every lie. Judge Wyatt had abandoned his gavel and was trying to leave the bench, but 2 U.S. Marshals who'd been waiting in the back of the courtroom moved to block his path. Alice had contacted the FBI before the hearing. The evidence Jordan had gathered implicated federal crimes. Your Honor, Alice said formally, I move for the immediate release of Kevin Gamble and the dismissal of all charges. I also request that this court be made aware that the FBI has been investigating corruption in this jurisdiction for several months. As if on cue, FBI agents enter the courtroom. Edgar Rush bolted for the side door, but found his path blocked by Cecil Montgomery and two very large men who worked for Melvin Combs. The bail bondsman had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Mr. Rush," one of the FBI agents called out, "we need to speak with you about your gambling debts and how you've been paying them off with information from the prosecutor's office." Edgar's shoulders slumped in defeat. He was trapped between federal investigators and angry criminals. There was nowhere to run. Judge Wyatt was already being escorted out in handcuffs, his judicial immunity worthless against the evidence of bribery and corruption. As he passed Jordan, he whispered, "You have no idea what you've done. This goes deeper than you think." Jordan smiled. "I know exactly how deep it goes, Harold, and I know exactly who else is involved." Maxine stood shakily, her face streaked with tears and makeup. "Jordan, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but—" "The only mistake you made," Jordan said quietly, "was thinking you could betray my son and live to enjoy it. You're done, Maxine. Your lover is done. Your father is done. And in about 20 minutes, Kevin is going to walk out of prison a free man." As FBI agents moved to arrest Maxine for conspiracy to commit murder, she looked at Jordan one last time. "I loved you once." "No," Jordan replied. "You loved what I could give you. You never loved me, and you sure as hell never loved our son." The courtroom was clearing out as various law enforcement agencies took custody of their respective prisoners. Alice approached Jordan with a smile. "Kevin should be released within the hour." "You did it, Jordan. Phase 1 is complete," Jordan corrected. "But this isn't over. Judge Wyatt was right. This does go deeper, and I'm going to root out every bit of corruption that tried to destroy my family." Jordan walked out of the courthouse a free man whose son would soon be equally free. But he wasn't satisfied yet. Destroying Edgar Rush, Maxine, and Judge Wyatt was just the beginning. There were others involved in the conspiracy against Kevin, and Jordan intended to find them all. After all, he was a man who never forgave and never forgot. And he was just getting started. Chapter 5, The Network. Kevin Gamble walked out of Stateville Correctional Center that afternoon, squinting in the sunlight after 3 weeks of imprisonment. Jordan was waiting by his car, and for the first time in months, he smiled genuinely as his son ran toward him. "Dad, I can't believe it's over," Kevin said, embracing his father. "It's not over," Jordan replied, his voice gentle but firm. "Not yet. We need to talk." During the drive back to Chicago, Jordan explained everything to Kevin. The affair between Maxine and Edgar Rush. The conspiracy with Judge Wyatt. The plan to kill Jordan and steal his assets. Kevin listened in stunned silence as his father described how his own mother had been willing to sacrifice him to clear the way for her new life. "She really wanted me to stay in prison?" Kevin asked, his voice hollow. "Son, she suggested you deserve the death penalty. Your own mother." Jordan's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. But that's not the worst of it. This conspiracy goes beyond just the three of them. Jordan had spent the last 24 hours following up on Judge Wyatt's parting words. His investigation had revealed a network of corruption that ran through multiple law enforcement agencies, the prosecutor's office, and even city government. Edgar Rush hadn't been working alone. He'd been part of a system that was selling justice to the highest bidder. Who else was involved? Kevin asked. At least 6 other prosecutors, 3 judges, 2 police chiefs, and half the city council. They've been running a protection racket disguised as law enforcement. Rich criminals pay for light sentences or drop charges. Poor criminals get railroaded to maintain their conviction statistics. Jordan pulled into the parking lot of a diner outside the city. "We're meeting someone here. Someone who's going to help us take down the entire network." Inside the diner, Ismail Graves was waiting in a corner booth. Graves was a former federal prosecutor who'd been forced out when he'd gotten too close to exposing the corruption Jordan had just uncovered. He'd been working as a private attorney for the past 2 years, building his own case against the network. "Jordan," Graves said, standing to shake hands. "I saw the news about the hearing. Outstanding work. Ismail, this is my son Kevin. Kevin, Ismail has been tracking the same corruption network that framed you." As they sat down, Graves pulled out a thick folder. Edgar Rush was small time compared to what's really going on. The network has been operating for at least 5 years. They've fixed hundreds of cases, stolen millions in evidence money, and probably gotten dozens of innocent people convicted. How many people are we talking about? Jordan asked. At least 30 city and county officials. Maybe more. They call themselves the syndicate, and they meet monthly to divide up territories and coordinate their activities. Kevin leaned forward. Are you saying there are other innocent people in prison because of these people? Dozens of them, Graves confirmed. Young men mostly, from poor families who couldn't afford real legal defense. They needed scapegoats to maintain their conviction rates, while they let the real criminals walk free. Jordan felt his anger building again. It wasn't enough that they destroyed his family. They've been destroying other families for years. What do you need from me? Your evidence was crucial, but we need more. The FBI investigation you triggered is going to force them underground. We need to catch them before they destroy evidence and disappear. Graves explained that the syndicate was planning an emergency meeting that weekend to discuss damage control. Through his contacts, he learned they were planning to eliminate anyone who could testify against them, including some of their own members who might turn state's evidence. They're going to kill their own people? Kevin asked. These aren't good people, son, Jordan replied. When cornered animals get desperate, they eat their young. Graves slid a photograph across the table. It showed a warehouse on the south side of Chicago. They're meeting here Saturday night. If we can get recordings of that meeting, we'll have enough to bring down the entire network. That's FBI territory, Jordan pointed out. The FBI has been investigating for months and gotten nowhere. These people are too smart, too careful. But you've already proven you can outthink them. Jordan studied the photograph. The warehouse was in a rough neighborhood, surrounded by empty lots and abandoned buildings. It would be heavily guarded, and the people inside would be armed and desperate. I'll need help, he said finally. I know some people, Graves replied. Ex-military, ex-law enforcement. People who've been screwed over by this same network. This is dangerous, Dad, Kevin said. These people already tried to destroy our family. If they find out you're coming after them. Jordan looked at his son. Kevin, your mother betrayed us both. She was willing to let you rot in prison and have me killed. These people have been destroying innocent families for years. If we don't stop them, they'll just start over somewhere else. Kevin was quiet for a moment, then nodded. What do you need me to do? I need you to stay safe. Go stay with your Uncle Rick in Wisconsin until this is over. Don't contact anyone. Don't trust anyone. Can you do that? Dad, I want to help. You help by staying alive and safe. These people have already proven they'll kill to protect their secrets. After Kevin left for Wisconsin, Jordan spent the next 2 days planning the most dangerous operation of his career. Graves had recruited 4 men to help. Jim Eaton and Israel Hill, both former military police who'd been framed and drummed out of the service by corrupt officers. Derek Stratton, an ex-Chicago cop who'd been fired for refusing to take bribes. And Joshua Rich, a private security contractor who specialized in surveillance. The plan was simple but risky. They would infiltrate the warehouse meeting, record everything, and get the evidence to the FBI before the syndicate could react. Jordan would lead the team, using his knowledge of surveillance and investigation to coordinate the operation. But Jordan had a secondary plan he didn't share with Graves or the others. He'd spent 25 years learning that sometimes the law wasn't enough. Sometimes, when people betrayed everything good and decent, they needed to face consequences that went beyond prison time. The syndicate had destroyed his family, railroaded his son, and corrupted everything they touched. Saturday night, Jordan intended to make sure they never hurt another innocent family again. And if that required going beyond the law he'd served most of his life, so be it. Some betrayals demanded permanent solutions. Chapter 6. The Trap. Saturday night came with a cold October rain that turned the streets around the warehouse district into rivers of oil and grime. Jordan sat in a stolen van with his team, watching the warehouse through night vision scopes as members of the syndicate arrived for their emergency meeting. Counts so far, Jordan asked quietly. 15 vehicles, probably 30 to 40 people inside, Jim Eaton reported. Security is heavy. They've got sentries posted at every entrance. Jordan had spent 2 days studying the warehouse's layout and the backgrounds of everyone expected to attend. Besides Edgar Rush, who was already in federal custody, Judge Harold Wyatt, also arrested, and several other lower-level conspirators, the meeting would include the real power players: District Attorney Jesse Flynn, Police Chief Robert Nelson, and City Councilman Cecil Montgomery. What the syndicate didn't know was that Jordan had inside information about their plans. Through a contact in the mayor's office, someone who'd grown tired of the corruption, Jordan knew they were planning to eliminate several witnesses and destroy evidence. They were also discussing permanently removing Jordan himself as a threat. "They know I'm coming," Jordan said, checking his recording equipment one final time. "This whole meeting might be a trap." "Then why are we here?" Derek Stratton asked. "Because sometimes you have to walk into the trap to spring it properly." Jordan's real plan was more complex than simple surveillance. He'd spent the last 48 hours setting up his own trap, one that would catch the syndicate in the act of planning murders, while simultaneously exposing the full scope of their corruption to the public. Through his network of contacts, Jordan had arranged for local news crews to be accidentally in the area when the raid went down. He'd also ensured that several honest FBI agents not compromised by the syndicate, would be standing by to make arrests. But first, he needed to get inside and document their crimes. "Israel, you're with me. Jim and Derek, maintain perimeter watch. Joshua, monitor police frequencies. If this goes wrong, we need to know if corrupt cops are coming to help them." Jordan and Israel Hill moved through the rain toward the warehouse's north entrance. Israel was a former Army Ranger who'd been discharged under false accusations of assault, accusations that Jordan's investigation had proven were fabricated by the same network they were now infiltrating. The sentries were overconfident, relying on the warehouse's isolated location rather than proper security protocols. Jordan and Israel neutralized 2 guards silently, using techniques they'd both learned in very different contexts. The guards would wake up with headaches, but nothing worse. Inside the warehouse, Jordan could hear voices echoing from the main floor. He and Israel made their way to an office overlooking the meeting area, where they had a clear view and audio recording range. Below them, 37 members of the syndicate sat around a collection of tables, looking like a board meeting from hell. District Attorney Jesse Flynn was standing at the front, addressing the group. "The Rush situation has exposed us," Flynn was saying. "The FBI is already moving on the judges and prosecutors we can't trust to keep quiet. We need to accelerate our contingency plans." Police Chief Robert Nelson stood up. "What about Jordan Gamble? He's the one who brought this all down. If we don't deal with him, he'll keep digging until he exposes everyone." "Gamble is a problem that needs a permanent solution," Flynn agreed. "Along with his son and that federal prosecutor Graves, who's been sniffing around." Jordan continued recording as they discussed specific plans to murder him, Kevin, and Ismail Graves. They talked about making it look like a robbery gone wrong, or perhaps a car accident. These weren't abstract criminal conspiracies. They were detailed murder plots against specific individuals. But Jordan wasn't just there to record. He was there to end this. He activated a signal device that sent a message to Joshua Rich, Phase 2. Suddenly, the warehouse's main lights went out, replaced by emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows throughout the building. At the same time, Jordan's voice echoed through the warehouse's PA system. He'd hacked into their communications earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen of the syndicate," Jordan's voice boomed through the speakers. "This is Jordan Gamble. You've been discussing my murder for the last 10 minutes. I thought you should know I've been recording every word." Chaos erupted below. People were shouting, drawing weapons, running for exits. But Jordan had planned for this too. "You might want to look outside before you try to leave," Jordan continued through the PA. "The FBI has the building surrounded. Local news crews are filming everything. And I've just transmitted recordings of your murder conspiracy to every major news outlet in Chicago." Through the office window, Jordan could see the panic on Flynn's face as she realized the scope of their exposure. This wasn't just about prosecution anymore. It was about public humiliation and the complete destruction of their network. But several members of the syndicate weren't going down quietly. Jordan saw weapons being drawn, heard orders being shouted to find him and kill him. Israel, Jordan said quietly, time to go. They're going to come looking for us, and they're not planning to arrest us. As they moved toward their exit route, Jordan activated one more device. Throughout the warehouse, speakers began playing recordings of the syndicate's own conversations over the past year. Discussions of bribes, fixed cases, and destroyed evidence. Every crime they committed was being broadcast to the FBI agents and news crews outside. The war wasn't over yet, but the syndicate was about to learn what happened when they declared war on the wrong man's family. Chapter 7. The Hunt. Jordan and Israel fought their way through the warehouse as syndicate members systematically searched for them. The emergency lighting created a maze of shadows and confusion, but Jordan had studied the building's layout obsessively. He knew every exit, every hiding spot, every potential advantage. Movement, second floor, Israel whispered, pointing to a catwalk above them. Jordan looked up to see Robert Nelson and two armed men moving along the metal walkway. The police chief had his service weapon drawn and was directing his men with hand signals. These weren't arrests. They were executions. Nelson, Jordan called out, his voice echoing through the warehouse. Funny how the chief of police becomes a murderer when his corruption gets exposed. Nelson spun toward the sound, firing 3 shots that sparked off metal support beams near Jordan's position. Gamble, you should have minded your own business. My son was my business. Jordan replied, moving to a new position. My family was my business. And every innocent person you've railroaded was my business. Outside, Jordan could hear the sounds of FBI agents moving into position. But inside the warehouse, the syndicate had decided to make their last stand. If they were going down, they intended to take Jordan with them. District Attorney Jesse Flynn appeared from behind a stack of shipping containers, flanked by 3 men Jordan recognized as corrupt detectives from his central district. Mr. Gamble, she called out, you've caused us considerable inconvenience. Perhaps we can work out an arrangement. The only arrangement I'm interested in, Jordan replied, is watching you all go to prison for the rest of your lives. Flynn smiled coldly. I don't think that's going to happen. You see, we have your son. Jordan felt ice water in his veins. Kevin is in Wisconsin. Kevin was in Wisconsin. We picked him up this morning. He's in a secure location, and his continued health depends on your cooperation. Jordan's mind raced. If they really had Kevin, everything changed. His son's safety was more important than justice, more important than revenge, more important than anything else in the world. What do you want? Jordan asked. All your evidence. Every recording, every document, every piece of information you've gathered about our organization. In exchange, your son lives and you both disappear. Forever. Jordan was quiet for a long moment, appearing to consider the offer. But his silence wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. He was running through contingency plans he'd hoped never to use. How do I know you have him? Jordan asked. Flynn held up a cell phone and played a brief audio clip. Kevin's voice saying, Dad, they have me. Don't trust them. They're going to kill us both no matter what you. The recording cut off. Convince me you'll honor the deal, Jordan said. You're not in a position to negotiate, Mr. Gamble. You have 30 seconds to decide. What Flynn didn't know was that Jordan had been in contact with Kevin every few hours since he'd left for Wisconsin. Kevin's uncle, Rick Willis, was an ex-Marine who'd taught Jordan everything he knew about tactical planning. If the syndicate really had Kevin, Rick would have already contacted Jordan, which meant they were bluffing. Counter-offer, Jordan said, his voice carrying clearly through the warehouse. You all surrender to the FBI agents outside, and I don't activate the device that will bring this entire building down on top of us. Flynn laughed. You're bluffing. Am I? Jordan pulled out a remote detonator that Israel had helped him prepare earlier. I've spent 3 days placing explosives throughout this building's support structure. If I press this button, everyone inside dies, including me. The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of rain on the metal roof. You wouldn't, Nelson said from the catwalk above. You're not a killer. I'm a father whose son was betrayed by his own mother and railroaded by corrupt prosecutors, Jordan replied. I'm a husband whose wife planned to have him murdered. I'm a man who's discovered that the justice system he believed in is completely corrupted. What exactly do you think I wouldn't do? Through his earpiece, Jordan heard Joshua Rich's voice. FBI is breaching the building. News crews are getting everything on camera. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now. Jordan smiled grimly. Actually, Flynn, you're right about one thing. I am bluffing about the explosives. Relief began to show on Flynn's face. But I wasn't bluffing about this. Jordan pressed a different button on the device. Suddenly, every cell phone in the warehouse began receiving the same text message. GPS coordinates for a storage facility across town, along with a message, evidence of syndicate corruption stored here. Building rigged to explode if tampered with. Contact FBI. What did you do? Flynn demanded. Insurance, Jordan replied. Even if you kill me, even if you destroy all the evidence in this building, there are copies of everything stored in a location that only I know. And if anything happens to me or my son, that location gets revealed to every law enforcement agency in the country. FBI agents were now flooding into the warehouse, shouting commands and taking people into custody. Jordan could see the terror in Flynn's eyes as she realized their network was finished. But Jordan wasn't done yet. As FBI agents moved to arrest him along with everyone else, he handed over his recordings and walked toward the exit. He had one more betrayal to address, and this one was personal. Where are you going? Israel asked. To settle the last score, Jordan replied. Maxine is being held at the federal courthouse. It's time for her to understand what happens when you betray family. The war was almost over, but the most personal battle was yet to come. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. Jordan sat across from Maxine in the federal courthouse's secure conference room. She was still in orange jail clothes, her makeup long gone, her carefully maintained appearance destroyed by 3 days in custody. For 26 years, she'd been his wife. Now, she was just another criminal who betrayed his family. Jordan, she said, her voice small and broken, I know you must hate me. Hate. Jordan considered the word. No, Maxine. Hate implies you still matter to me emotionally. You're just a problem I need to solve permanently. Maxine's attorney, a public defender named Toby Maynard, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mr. Gamble, perhaps we could discuss a plea arrangement. There is no plea arrangement, Jordan interrupted. Maxine is going to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to frame an innocent person, and adultery that violated the terms of our prenuptial agreement. She's going to forfeit any claim to my assets, and she's going to publicly confess her role in Kevin's false imprisonment. And if I refuse? Maxine asked. Jordan smiled coldly. Then I released the video. What video? Jordan placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. The screen showed Maxine and Edgar Rush in what appeared to be Edgar's apartment. But the audio was what made Maxine's face go white. We need to make sure Kevin never gets out, Maxine's voice said clearly. Even if Jordan proves his innocence, Kevin knows too much about our plans. What are you suggesting? Edgar's voice replied. Prison accidents happen, especially to young men who might testify against prosecutors and judges. Jordan paused the video. You weren't just willing to let our son stay in prison, Maxine. You were planning to have him killed. Maxine's lawyer looked sick. Mrs. Gamble, you never told me about any of this. There's more, Jordan continued, advancing the video. Tell him about the insurance policies, Maxine. Tell him how you were going to collect on my death and start a new life with Edgar. The next segment showed Maxine discussing specific plans to poison Jordan's food or arrange for a car accident. She had researched his daily routines, his favorite restaurants, even his jogging routes. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated, methodical plan to murder her husband and son. Jesus Christ, Toby Maynard whispered. Mrs. Gamble, this video shows premeditation for 2 separate murders. If this goes to trial, you're looking at life in prison. Maxine was crying now, but Jordan felt no sympathy. 26 years of marriage, and you were planning to kill me and our son. Did you ever love either of us? I loved you once, Maxine said through her tears. But things changed. Edgar made me feel alive again. He understood me in ways you never did. Edgar understood your bank accounts, Jordan corrected. He understood that killing me would make you a wealthy widow. He understood that destroying Kevin would eliminate any witness to your conspiracy. Jordan leaned forward across the table. But here's what you never understood, Maxine. You married a man who spent 25 years learning how to destroy people who betray trust. You thought you were smarter than me, more clever than me. You thought you could manipulate the system and get away with it. He gestured toward the tablet, still showing their recorded conversation. How did that work out for you? Maxine looked at her lawyer desperately. What are my options? Toby Maynard reviewed his notes. If you plead guilty to all charges and cooperate fully with Mr. Gamble's conditions, you might avoid the death penalty. But you're still looking at life in prison without parole. And if I don't cooperate? Jordan answered instead of the lawyer. Then this video gets released to every news outlet in Chicago. Your parents see it. Your sister sees it. Your former friends see it. Everyone knows that you planned to murder your own family for money. And then you still get life in prison. You want me to confess publicly? I want Kevin to hear from your own mouth that you betrayed him. I want him to understand that his mother chose a criminal over her own son. I want him to have closure. Jordan stood to leave. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the video goes public regardless of your choice. As Jordan reached the door, Maxine called out to him. Jordan, wait. What about forgiveness? What about the family we built together? What about the good times we had? Jordan turned back to face her one last time. The family we built together was a lie. The good times were based on deception and forgiveness. He shook his head. I'm not a forgiving man, Maxine. I never have been. You knew that when you married me, and you knew that when you betrayed me. So this is it. 26 years means nothing. 26 years of lies means exactly what it should mean, Jordan replied. Nothing. Jordan left the courthouse and drove to the hospital where Kevin was recovering from his ordeal. His son had been found safe at his uncle's house. The syndicate's claim about kidnapping him had been another lie, another desperate attempt to manipulate the situation. How did it go with Mom? Kevin asked when Jordan entered his room. Your mother chose Edgar Rush over her family. She was planning to have us both killed. She's going to spend the rest of her life in prison. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Do you think she ever really loved us? I think she loved what we represented to her, Jordan replied. Security, status, respectability. But when someone better came along, someone who could give her more money and excitement, she was willing to destroy us to get it. I keep thinking about what she said at the trial, that I deserve the death penalty. Jordan sat down beside his son's bed. Kevin, some people are incapable of real love. They can mimic it, perform it, but when tested, they choose themselves every time. Your mother is one of those people. What happens now? Now we rebuild. The house, our family, our trust in each other. And we never, ever forgive the people who tried to destroy us. Kevin nodded. I don't think I could forgive her anyway. Good, Jordan said. Because forgiveness is for people who deserve it, and betrayal of family is unforgivable. As Jordan prepared to leave the hospital, his phone rang. It was Alice Johns. Jordan, I have news. Maxine has agreed to plead guilty to all charges. She wants to make her public confession tomorrow. And the others? Edgar Rush is cooperating with federal prosecutors. Judge Wyatt is looking at 20 years minimum. The entire syndicate is being dismantled. You did it, Jordan. You brought them all down. Jordan smiled grimly. No, Alice. I didn't bring them down. They brought themselves down when they chose to betray innocent people. I just made sure they faced the consequences. Tomorrow, Maxine would confess her crimes publicly. The syndicate would be destroyed, and Kevin would finally have justice. But for Jordan, justice wasn't enough. He was a man who neither forgave nor forgot, and he still had one final score to settle. Chapter 9. No Forgiveness. 6 months later, Jordan stood in the cemetery as they lowered Edgar Rush's casket into the ground. Only a handful of people attended the funeral. Rush had died alone in federal prison, the victim of what authorities called a random assault by other inmates. Jordan knew better. In prison, corrupt prosecutors didn't last long, especially when certain people made sure the right inmates knew about Rush's crimes against children and families. Jordan hadn't directly ordered Edgar's death, but he hadn't prevented it either. Sometimes justice required patience, and sometimes it required allowing natural consequences to unfold. Kevin stood beside him, now 23 and finishing his degree in criminal justice. The young man had changed during his brief imprisonment and the months that followed. He'd grown harder, more focused, more like his father in ways that both pleased and concerned Jordan. "Do you think he suffered?" Kevin asked quietly. "I hope so," Jordan replied without emotion. "He destroyed innocent lives for money. He deserved to suffer." They drove from a cemetery to the federal courthouse, where Maxine was being transferred to her permanent prison assignment. Jordan had requested permission to see her one final time before she disappeared into the federal system forever. Maxine looked older, grayer, defeated in ways that went beyond physical appearance. The woman who had once commanded social circles and charity committees was now just another convicted felon facing life in prison. "Why did you come here?" she asked when Jordan entered the visiting room. "To make sure you understand something," Jordan replied, sitting across from her at the metal table. "Edgar Rush is dead, killed in prison 3 days ago, beaten to death by inmates who didn't appreciate his crimes against families." Maxine's face went pale. "You had him killed." "I didn't have to. Word gets around in prison about what people have done. Corrupt prosecutors who destroy children's lives don't last long." "Jordan, please. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Kevin, but you didn't hurt us, Maxine. You tried to destroy us. There's a difference." Jordan leaned forward. "I want you to understand something very clearly. You will spend the rest of your life in prison. You will never see your son again. You will never see me again. Your parents have disowned you. Your sister has moved to California and changed her name. Everyone you ever cared about is gone. Jordan, I'm begging you. You're going to die alone in a cell, forgotten by everyone who ever mattered. And when you do die, no one will come to your funeral. No one will mourn you. No one will remember you as anything more than a woman who betrayed her own family for money." Maxine was sobbing now, but Jordan felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no second thoughts about the path he'd chosen. "This is what happens when you betray family," Jordan continued. "This is what happens when you choose criminals over the people who love you. This is what happens when you cross a man who never forgives and never forgets." Jordan stood to leave. "Goodbye, Maxine. I hope you live a very long time, because every day you spend in that cell is a day you'll remember what you lost when you chose Edgar Rush over your family." As Jordan walked away, Maxine called after him. "What about Kevin? What about giving him a chance to say goodbye to his mother?" Jordan paused at the door, but didn't turn around. "Kevin doesn't have a mother anymore. His mother died the day she chose to betray him." Outside the courthouse, Kevin was waiting by the car. "How did it go?" "It's finished," Jordan said. "She's gone forever, and we never have to think about her again." They drove home to the new house Jordan had bought across town. A fresh start in a place untainted by memories of Maxine's betrayal. As they pulled into the driveway, Kevin asked the question that had been bothering him for months. "Dad, do you ever think about forgiveness? About letting go of anger?" Jordan considered the question seriously. "Kevin, forgiveness is a luxury for people who can afford it. It's for people whose enemies show remorse, who try to make amends, who deserve a second chance. And our enemies try to destroy us completely. They were willing to see you rot in prison forever. They were willing to have me murdered. They felt no remorse, showed no mercy, and would have done it all again if they'd gotten away with it." Jordan turned to face his son. "Forgiveness is for people who deserve it." Maxine and Edgar and the rest of them forfeited any right to forgiveness when they chose to betray family. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Kevin nodded slowly. "I don't think I could forgive her anyway." "Then you're learning," Jordan said with satisfaction. "You're learning that loyalty is everything, that trust once broken can never be repaired, and that some betrayals demand permanent consequences." That evening, Jordan sat in his new office, looking at photographs of Kevin's graduation from the police academy. His son had decided to become a detective, following in his father's footsteps in the pursuit of justice. But Kevin had learned lessons about justice that went beyond what they taught in textbooks. Jordan's phone rang. It was Alice Johns. Jordan, I want to let you know, Judge Wyatt died in prison today. Heart attack, they're saying. Natural causes? As natural as anything gets in federal prison when you're a corrupt judge who destroyed children's lives. Jordan smiled. Thank you for letting me know. After hanging up, Jordan made one final entry in the journal he'd been keeping throughout this ordeal. Harold Wyatt, deceased. Edgar Rush, deceased. Maxine Gamble, life sentence, no parole. The syndicate, dismantled. Justice served. Family protected. No forgiveness given to those who deserved none. Jordan closed the journal and locked it in his safe. The war was over. His enemies were dead or in prison forever. His son was safe and had learned the hard lessons about loyalty and betrayal that would serve him well in life. And Jordan Gamble remained exactly what he'd always been, a man who never forgave, never forgot, and never allowed betrayal to go unpunished. In the end, that's exactly the kind of man his family needed him to be. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Homecoming. Cole Morrison adjusted his prosthetic leg as the taxi pulled into the driveway of what used to be his sanctuary. 22 years of military service, 3 tours in Afghanistan, and a roadside bomb that took his right leg below the knee. All of it led to this moment. Christmas Eve, 2024. The house looked the same, but something felt different. The Christmas lights blinked cheerfully, mocking the darkness that had settled in his chest since the injury. Cole had been deployed for 18 months this last time. Before that, it was constant rotations, constant missions. He'd sent every paycheck home to Diana, his wife of 25 years, trusting her to manage their finances and raise their son Tyler. He'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, all for duty, honor, and family. The family he was about to see for the first time since losing his leg. Diana opened the door, and Cole searched her face for warmth, for the woman who used to write him love letters during his first deployment. Instead, he found cold politeness. "You're early," she said, not embracing him. Tyler's friends are still here. 23-year-old Tyler appeared behind her, taller now, wearing an expensive watch Cole didn't recognize. His son's eyes held something Cole had never seen before, contempt. "Dad." Tyler's greeting was flat, obligatory. The living room buzzed with Tyler's friends, young men and women Cole didn't recognize. They glanced at his military uniform, his prosthetic, and looked away quickly. Diana had prepared the house for a party, not a homecoming. Dinner was served at 8. Cole sat at the head of the table he'd built with his own hands 15 years ago, watching his family move around him like he was a stranger. Diana barely spoke, and Tyler's conversation focused on his new job at some tech startup, his girlfriend Madison, and his plans to move to California. "So, Tyler," Cole said, cutting into his prime rib, "tell me about this job. What exactly do you do?" Tyler exchanged a glance with Diana. "I'm in marketing, social media campaigns, influencer partnerships. You wouldn't understand it." The dismissive tone hit Cole like a slap. He'd commanded men in life-or-death situations, had a master's degree in engineering, but his own son thought he was too stupid to understand marketing. "Try me," Cole said evenly. "Dad, it's complicated. You've been gone so long. Things have changed. Technology, culture, everything. You're kind of behind." Diana finally spoke. "Tyler's doing very well. He's making 6 figures already." Cole felt something cold settle in his stomach. 6 figures? From a startup? "Some people adapt," Tyler said. "Some people get left behind." The conversation died. Cole excused himself to his old study, finding it converted into Diana's craft room. His military commendations, photos from his service, certificates, all gone, replaced with scrapbooking supplies and romance novels. He returned to find dessert being served. Tyler was showing Madison something on his phone, both of them laughing. Diana was clearing plates with mechanical efficiency. "Son," Cole said, I thought maybe tomorrow we could go to the range. I could teach you some proper shooting techniques. Tyler looked up, his face twisted with something ugly. I don't think so, Dad. Why not? We used to. We used to do a lot of things. Before you decided the army was more important than family. Cole set down his coffee cup carefully. Everything I did was for this family. Bullshit. Tyler's voice rose. The room fell silent. You want to know what you did? You left us. For years and years, you just left. Mom had to raise me alone while you played soldier. Tyler. Diana's voice held a warning, but not the kind Cole expected. It wasn't don't hurt your father's feelings. It was not here, not now. But Tyler was beyond caring. The alcohol, the audience, the years of resentment, it all came pouring out. You sent money, sure. Like that made up for missing every important moment of my life. Every birthday, every game, every graduation. And now you come back broken, expecting us to just pretend you're the man of the house again. Cole stood slowly, his prosthetic clicking against the hardwood. I served my country. I served you. Every sacrifice I made was your choice. Tyler slammed his hand on the table. Nobody forced you to re-enlist. Nobody forced you to miss my childhood. You chose the army over us every single time. That's not true. Tyler stood too, facing his father across the table. Isn't it? When I was 10 and broke my arm, where were you? When I had pneumonia at 12, where were you? When I graduated high school, where were you? Each question was a knife. Cole had been in Iraq, then Afghanistan, then training exercises in North Carolina. Always somewhere else. When Mom was crying herself to sleep every night for years, where were you? The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Cole looked at Diana, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. I was protecting this family, this country. Everything I did, everything you did was selfish. Tyler's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. You got to play hero while we dealt with real life. Well, guess what? We don't need your protection anymore. We don't need your money anymore. And we sure as hell don't need you. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Cole looked around the table at the faces staring back at him. His son's friends watched like this was entertainment. Diana sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. Madison looked uncomfortable but fascinated. Tyler, Cole said softly, I know I wasn't perfect, but I'm here now. I want to make things right. Tyler laughed, a bitter sound that cut through Cole's heart. Make things right? You think showing up broken and expecting gratitude makes things right? You want to know what would make things right? He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with years of accumulated rage. You're a burden. Get out of our house. The words hit Cole like physical blows. He looked at his wife, the woman he'd loved for over 2 decades, waiting for her to defend him, to tell Tyler he'd gone too far. Diana looked at her hands and said nothing. This is my house, Cole said quietly. I built it. I paid for it. With what? Army paychecks. Tyler sneered. Mom's been handling the finances while you were gone. Things change. People move on. Cole's training kicked in, the cold assessment of a tactical situation. Something was very wrong here. Tyler's confidence, Diana's silence, the expensive watch, the casual mention of 6-figure salaries from a startup. Get out, Tyler repeated. Go find some VFW hall to cry in. We're done pretending to be your family. Cole looked one more time at Diana. She still wouldn't meet his eyes. Without another word, Cole walked to the closet, retrieved his old duffel bag, and packed his few belongings. 25 years of marriage, a lifetime of service, and it all fit in one bag. As he reached the door, Diana finally spoke. Cole. He turned, hoping for something, anything that resembled the woman he'd married. Your disability checks, she said quietly. I'll have them forwarded wherever you end up. Cole nodded once and walked out into the December night. Chapter 2. The Neighbor's Farm. The Greyhound bus wheezed to a stop at the intersection of County Road 47 and Old Mill Road at 3 a.m. Cole was the only passenger getting off in the middle of nowhere, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder and his prosthetic aching from the 6-hour ride. The bus driver looked at him with pity as he hobbled down the steps. You sure about this, soldier? Ain't nothing out here but farmland and coyotes. Cole nodded and watched the bus disappear into the darkness. leaving him alone under a canopy of stars he'd almost forgotten existed. The December air bit through his jacket, but the cold felt clean after the suffocating atmosphere of his former home. Frank Whitmore's farm was 3 miles down Old Mill Road. Cole had met Frank during his first leave after basic training 26 years ago. Frank was a Vietnam vet who'd taken one look at the young soldier and offered him a job during his leave periods. Cole had spent countless hours on this farm, learning about life from a man who understood the weight of service. The walk gave Cole time to think. Tyler's words echoed in his head, but underneath the pain was something else, questions. How was Tyler making 6 figures at 23? When had Diana become so cold? Why had his son's resentment felt so prepared? Like a speech he'd been rehearsing. Frank's farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel driveway, a warm yellow glow emanating from the kitchen window. Cole had called from the bus station, and Frank had simply said, "Come home, son." Before Cole could knock, the door opened. Frank Whitmore stood there, 68 years old and still broad-shouldered, his weathered face creasing into a sad smile. "Jesus, Cole, look at you." Frank's embrace was everything Diana's should have been: warm, welcoming, real. Cole found himself fighting back tears he'd been holding since the bomb went off. "Come on, coffee's hot." The kitchen smelled like bacon and would smoke. Frank poured 2 cups of coffee and gestured to the worn wooden table where they'd shared hundreds of conversations over the years. "Want to talk about it?" Cole told him everything. The deployment, the injury, the homecoming, Tyler's explosion, Diana's silence. Frank listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each detail. When Cole finished, Frank was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. "Cole," he said finally, "there's something I've been waiting to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago, but I kept hoping I was wrong." Cole felt ice form in his veins. "What?" Frank stood and walked to the window, looking out at his fields. "You remember Rick Lawson?" The name hit Cole like a physical blow. Rick Lawson, his best friend from his first unit, his best man at his wedding, Tyler's godfather. They'd served together for 6 years before Rick left the Army to pursue civilian opportunities. "Rick's been coming around," Frank said quietly. "Started about 8 months ago. At first, I thought maybe he was just checking on Diana while you were deployed, being a good friend." Cole's mouth went dry. "At first, then I started noticing patterns. His truck at your house when Tyler was at work. Staying overnight. Diana going to book club 3 nights a week, but her car ending up at his apartment complex." The room tilted. Cole gripped the edge of the table. "I'm sorry, son. I watched them together at the grocery store last month. The way they looked at each other, that wasn't friendship." Cole's mind raced through memories, recontextualizing everything. Rick's frequent calls during his deployment. Diana's increasing emotional distance over the past year. Tyler's sudden hostility. "There's more," Frank said, his voice heavy. "About 3 weeks ago, I was at Murphy's bar. Rick was there, drunk, bragging to some woman about his new lifestyle. Said he'd found a way to live like a king without working for it." "What did he mean?" Frank turned back to Cole, his eyes filled with regret. "He said he had a sugar mama, a military wife whose husband was too stupid to notice what was happening to his own bank accounts." The words hit Cole like another roadside bomb. Everything clicked into place. Diana's control over the finances. Tyler's expensive lifestyle. The 6-figure job that didn't make sense. "He's been stealing from me," Cole said quietly. "That's what it sounds like." Rick mentioned something about Tyler being finally ready to choose sides and how the kid was getting rewarded for loyalty. Cole felt something inside him break. Not his heart, but something deeper. The last vestige of the trusting man he used to be. In its place rose something cold and calculating, forged by years of combat and sharpened by betrayal. "Frank," he said, his voice deadly calm, "I need to know everything. Every detail you've seen, every conversation you've overheard, every person who's been complicit in this." Frank studied his face and saw something that made him sit back down. "You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you?" Cole smiled, and Frank felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't the smile of the earnest young soldier he'd mentored. This was the smile of a predator. "Stupid? No. I'm thinking of doing something very, very smart. Chapter 3. The Architecture of Revenge. Cole spent the next 3 days at Frank's farm, but he wasn't recuperating. He was planning. Frank's old study became a war room, complete with a whiteboard covered in names, dates, and connections. Cole's military training in intelligence gathering and operational planning finally had a personal application. Frank had been more observant than Cole initially realized. The old farmer had kept detailed mental notes of Rick's visits, Diana's schedule changes, and even Tyler's sudden lifestyle improvements. More importantly, Frank had photos. Started taking these about 2 months ago, Frank explained, showing Cole pictures on his phone. Figured you'd want proof if it came to that. The photos were devastating. Rick's truck in Cole's driveway at odd hours. Diana and Rick holding hands at a restaurant in the next town over. Tyler and Rick shaking hands outside a BMW dealership, Rick apparently co-signing for Tyler's new car. But the most damning photo was from just last week. Diana, Rick, and Tyler would appear to be a Christmas shopping trip, all 3 of them laughing together like a family. They replaced me, Cole said quietly, studying the image. While I was fighting for my country, they replaced me. Frank poured himself a whiskey. What are you going to do? Cole had been asking himself the same question. His first instinct was violence. 22 years of military training had given him numerous ways to eliminate threats. But Rick, Diana, and Tyler weren't enemy combatants. They were something worse. They were traitors who needed to understand the consequences of betrayal. I'm going to destroy them, Cole said simply. But not quickly. They spent years planning this betrayal, executing it piece by piece. They deserve the same consideration. Cole opened his laptop. An old military-issued device Frank had helped him recover from storage, and began his reconnaissance. Tyler's social media painted a picture of sudden wealth, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, weekend trips to Las Vegas, all funded by money that should have been building Cole's family's future. Rick's digital footprint was more interesting. His LinkedIn showed a series of failed business ventures over the past 5 years. His Facebook revealed mounting debts, 2 divorces, and increasingly desperate posts about needing new opportunities. Until 8 months ago, when suddenly Rick was posting about his new consulting business and finally catching a break. Diana was harder to trace online, but bank records would tell the real story. Cole had maintained joint accounts, and as a disabled veteran, he had certain legal protections regarding his benefits and compensation. If Diana had been moving money without his knowledge, there would be consequences. But Cole wanted more than legal consequences. He wanted them to feel the same betrayal, the same loss, the same humiliation they'd inflicted on him. On the 4th morning, Cole made his first call to Marcus Hamilton, his old commanding officer who now worked as a private investigator in Virginia. Cole Morrison, you son of a bitch. Marcus's voice boomed through the phone. I heard about the IED. How are you holding up? I've been better. Marcus, I need a favor. A big one. Cole explained the situation in clinical detail. Marcus listened without comment until the end. Jesus Christ, Cole. Your own family. Former family, Cole corrected. I need you to run complete background checks on Rick Lawson and my wife Diana. Financial records, communication logs, everything you can legally access. I also need surveillance on all 3 of them for the next 2 weeks. Cole, this sounds like what? Like a man protecting his assets from theft? Like a veteran ensuring his disability benefits aren't being misused? Everything I'm asking for is legal, Marcus. There was a pause. What aren't you telling me? Cole smiled grimly. I'm not telling you about Phase 2. But don't worry. You'll have plausible deniability. Marcus sighed. I'll have preliminary reports by tomorrow night. Financial deep dive will take a week. Cole, be careful. Whatever you're planning, just remember you've got a future to think about. No, Marcus. I had a future. They stole it. Now I just have a mission. After hanging up, Cole turned to Frank, who'd been listening from the kitchen doorway. I need to establish a base of operations, Cole said. Somewhere I can work without being seen. Do you still own that hunting cabin up on Bear Mountain? Frank nodded slowly. I haven't been up there in 2 years, but it's got power and water. About 15 miles from your old house. Good sight lines of the valley. Perfect. I also need to make some purchases. Equipment, vehicles, communication gear. but everything has to be untraceable. Cole, you're scaring me a little. Cole stood, his prosthetic clicking against the floor. For the first time since Christmas dinner, he felt like himself again. Not the wounded veteran limping home to an ungrateful family, but Colonel Cole Morrison, a man who had never lost a mission. Frank, for 22 years, I protected people who couldn't protect themselves. I eliminated threats to innocent lives. I served with honor and integrity. He walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful farmland that would soon become his staging area. But those people in my house, they're not innocent. They're enemy combatants who declared war on my life, my service, and my sacrifice. And I'm going to treat them exactly like what they are. Frank felt a chill that had nothing to do with the December weather. The young man he'd mentored had returned, but he'd brought something back from the war, something dark and precise and utterly unforgiving. What do you need me to do? Cole turned back to him, and Frank saw the cold calculation of a professional soldier planning an operation. I need you to be my eyes and ears in town. Keep watching them, keep taking pictures. And Frank, Cole's smile was sharp as a blade. I need you to forget everything I just told you. As far as anyone knows, I'm a broken-down veteran hiding in the woods, too ashamed to face his family. Let them think that, Cole thought as he began drawing up plans for his new life. Let them think I'm weak and defeated. They were about to learn the difference between a defeated man and a tactical withdrawal. Chapter 4. Intelligence Gathering. The hunting cabin on Bear Mountain had been transformed into something that would have impressed Cole's old intelligence unit. Maps of the local area covered one wall, with pins marking Diana's work route, Rick's apartment, Tyler's new job, and the various locations where Frank had photographed them together. A second wall displayed financial documents, communication logs, and surveillance photos. Marcus Hamilton had delivered more than promised. Diana had been systematically draining Cole's accounts for over a year, transferring money to Rick through a series of shell companies. Tyler's startup job was fictional. He was actually being paid through one of Rick's dummy corporations, essentially receiving an allowance for betraying his father. The scope of the theft was staggering. Over $200,000 in combat pay, disability compensation, and veteran benefits had been redirected. They'd even taken out loans against Cole's military pension. It was sophisticated financial fraud that would have required months of planning. But Cole had found something even more damaging than theft: insurance policies. Diana had taken out 3 separate life insurance policies on Cole over the past 18 months, all with Rick as the secondary beneficiary after her. Combined with the existing military death benefits, Cole's demise would net them over $2 million. They weren't just stealing from me, Cole told Frank over dinner. They were planning to profit from my death. Frank set down his fork. That's attempted murder. Not quite, but it's conspiracy to commit fraud at minimum. They clearly expected my deployment to be permanent, one way or another. Cole's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. New surveillance photos. Check your email. The photos were from that afternoon. Diana and Rick at a jewelry store, looking at engagement rings. Tyler with them, clearly giving his approval. They weren't even waiting for divorce papers. Cole studied the images with clinical detachment. They think I'm neutralized, broken, too damaged, and ashamed to fight back. He opened his laptop and began typing. Over the next hour, he composed 3 different documents: a detailed financial crime report for the FBI's white-collar crime division, a military fraud complaint for the Army's criminal investigation division, and a civil lawsuit alleging theft, fraud, and conspiracy. But Cole didn't send any of them. Legal remedies would take years and might not even recover his money. Diana and Rick would hire lawyers, claim misunderstandings, drag proceedings out until Cole's resources were exhausted. No, Cole wanted something more immediate and more devastating. He opened a new document and began planning what he privately called Operation Family Values. The next morning, Cole drove into town for the first time since Christmas. His destination was Riverside Community Bank, where Diana worked as a loan officer. He parked across the street and waited, watching through binoculars as his wife went through her daily routine. Diana looked happy. She smiled at co-workers, laughed at someone's jokes, and seemed completely unburdened by guilt. It was like watching a stranger wearing his wife's face. At 12:30, Diana left for lunch. Instead of going to her usual restaurant, she drove to Rick's apartment complex. Cole followed at a distance, documenting everything. The reunion between Diana and Rick was passionate and public. They didn't even bother closing the curtains as they fell into bed together. Cole photographed it all through a telephoto lens, his face emotionless behind the camera. This wasn't about jealousy anymore. This was about evidence. That afternoon, Cole visited his old bank branch. Jennifer Walsh, the branch manager, had known Cole for 15 years. "Colonel Morrison, oh my God, we heard about your injury. How are you doing?" Cole played the role of the wounded veteran perfectly. Humble, grateful, slightly overwhelmed by civilian life. "I'm adjusting. Jennifer, I need to understand my account activity while I was deployed. Diana was handling everything, but I want to make sure I understand our financial position now that I'm back." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. "Of course. Let me pull up your accounts." As she reviewed the records, Cole watched her face change from confusion to concern to something approaching alarm. "Colonel Morrison," she said carefully, "I think you need to speak with our fraud prevention department." Cole leaned forward. "Why? Is there a problem?" "There have been unusual transfers. Large amounts moved to accounts I don't recognize. Loans taken against your pension. Changes to beneficiaries on several policies." Jennifer looked genuinely distressed. "Sir, if you didn't authorize these transactions." "I didn't authorize anything," Cole said quietly. "I trusted my wife to manage our finances while I was serving our country." Jennifer's face went pale. "Oh God, Colonel Morrison, I'm so sorry. We should have flagged some of these transactions for review." Cole reached across the desk and patted her hand gently. "You weren't the one who betrayed me, Jennifer. Can you help me document everything?" For the next 2 hours, Jennifer walked Cole through every suspicious transaction. The pattern was clear. Diana had been embezzling systematically, using her position at the bank to avoid scrutiny. She'd even convinced Jennifer that the transfers were for investment opportunities that Cole had discussed with her. "She said you were planning to start a consulting business when you returned," Jennifer explained. "She showed me what looked like your signature on authorization forms." Cole examined the forged signatures. They were good. Diana had been practicing. As they wrapped up, Jennifer asked the question Cole had been waiting for. "What are you going to do?" Cole looked out the window at the town where he'd planned to spend his retirement, the place where his wife was sleeping with his best friend while his son celebrated his father's absence. "I'm going to remind them that they messed with the wrong soldier." That evening, back at the cabin, Cole spread out his growing collection of evidence. Financial fraud, adultery, conspiracy, identity theft. He had enough to destroy all 3 of them legally. But Cole had spent too many years in tactical operations to be satisfied with legal destruction. He wanted psychological warfare. He wanted them to understand what it felt like to have everything they valued ripped away piece by piece. He picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. "Danny's Electronics, Danny speaking." "Danny, it's Cole Morrison. I need some specialized equipment." Danny Pierce had served under Cole in Afghanistan and now ran a security consulting business that served clients who valued discretion. "Colonel, heard you were stateside. What can I do for you?" "I need surveillance gear. Top-tier stuff. And I need it installed without anyone knowing it was ever there." There was a pause. "Cole, you sure you want to go down this road?" Cole smiled grimly. "Danny, I've been down roads you can't imagine. This is just another mission. When do you need it done?" Cole looked at his tactical calendar. Diana worked late on Thursdays. Tyler had a standing date with Madison on Friday nights. Rick played poker with his buddies every Saturday. Thursday night. "I'll send you the address." Phase 2 of Operation Family Values was about to begin. Chapter 5. Psychological Warfare. Thursday night's installation went flawlessly. Danny Pierce and his team entered Cole's former home while Diana was at her late inventory meeting, actually dinner and sex with Rick, and Tyler was supposedly studying at the library, actually drinking with friends at a bar downtown. In 90 minutes, they installed 14 micro cameras, 8 audio recording devices, and a complete digital monitoring system. "Everything streams to this mobile unit," Danny explained, handing Cole a military-grade tablet. "Audio, video, internet traffic, phone calls. If it happens in that house, you'll know about it." Cole tested the system, watching Diana return home alone at 11:47 p.m. She moved through the house like she owned it completely, which, legally, she probably did now. She even walked past Cole's old study, now her craft room, without a glance. "One more thing," Cole said. "I need you to set up a meeting." "With who?" "Rick Lawson. Tell him you represent a private military contractor looking for consultants with his background. Big money, immediate start, but he needs to come alone to discuss classification issues." Danny raised an eyebrow. "Cole, I'm not going to hurt him. I just want to have a conversation." "Where?" Cole smiled. "The Warehouse District. Building 47. Saturday at 8 p.m. Building 47 was a defunct manufacturing facility that Cole had scouted earlier. Isolated, soundproof, with multiple exit routes. Perfect for the kind of conversation he had in mind. Friday and Saturday brought a wealth of intelligence through the surveillance system. Cole watched his family's routine with the detached interest of a predator studying prey. Tyler spent Friday night with Madison, but not studying. They were planning their move to California, funded by Tyler's inheritance, money Tyler believed would come from forcing Cole out of the family. Madison was pregnant, a detail Tyler hadn't shared with anyone else yet. Diana's Saturday was more revealing. She spent the morning on the phone with a divorce attorney, discussing the fastest way to dissolve her marriage to a mentally unstable veteran who had threatened the family. She was building a narrative that would paint Cole as dangerous and unfit, justifying her theft as protection for Tyler. The surveillance also revealed something else. Rick wasn't just stealing money. He was documenting everything, taking photos of financial records, recording conversations with Diana about Cole's erratic behavior and violent tendencies. Rick was building an insurance policy against Cole's return, evidence that could be used to have Cole committed or arrested if he became a problem. By Saturday evening, Cole had everything he needed for Phase 3. But first, he had a meeting to attend. Building 47 sat in darkness as Cole arrived 30 minutes early. He'd spent the afternoon preparing, floodlights positioned for optimal psychological impact, recording equipment to capture every word, and a few props that would help make his point. Rick arrived precisely at 8 p.m., driving his new BMW, the one purchased with Cole's combat pay. He entered the building cautiously, calling out for Mr. Peterson, the fictional contractor Danny had impersonated. "Mr. Peterson? It's Rick Lawson. You said Building 47. Cole triggered the floodlights, illuminating the center of the warehouse. Rick spun around, temporarily blinded. "Hello, Rick." Cole's voice echoed off the concrete walls as he stepped into the light. Rick's face went through a rapid series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, fear, and finally a desperate attempt at normalcy. "Cole, Jesus, you scared me. What are you doing here? I thought I was meeting some contractor about a consulting job." "You are," Cole said quietly. "I'm consulting on a very specific problem." Rick's hand moved toward his pocket, probably reaching for his phone. Cole's voice stopped him. "I wouldn't. You'll want both hands free for this conversation." Cole began walking in a slow circle around Rick, staying just outside the light. 26 years we've known each other, Rick. Best man at my wedding. Godfather to my son. I trusted you with my life in Afghanistan. Cole, listen. I trusted you with my family while I was deployed. Asked you to check on Diana and Tyler. Make sure they were okay. Cole's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. You did check on Diana, didn't you? Rick's face was pale under the harsh lights. Cole, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. You're probably going to tell me it just happened. That you and Diana fell in love. That these things sometimes occur. That you never meant to hurt me. Cole stopped directly in front of Rick. But that would be a lie, wouldn't it? He pulled out a tablet and showed Rick the financial records. This took planning. Months of it. You didn't just steal my wife, Rick. You stole my life. Rick tried to straighten, to project confidence. Diana was lonely, Cole. You were never there. She needed someone who... Cole's fist connected with Rick's solar plexus, dropping him to his knees. It was a precise strike, calculated to disable without causing permanent damage. Wrong answer, Cole said calmly. Let me tell you what really happened. You've been struggling financially for years. 2 divorces, failed businesses, mounting debts. You saw an opportunity when I deployed, a woman with access to a military salary and a son who resented his father's absence. Rick gasped for air, unable to respond. You seduced my wife systematically, made her feel special, appreciated, loved. Then you convinced her that I didn't deserve her loyalty. You turned my son against me by playing the fun uncle while painting me as the absent father. And finally, you stole my money by making Diana your accomplice. Cole crouched down to Rick's level. But here's what you didn't plan for. I came home, and I'm not the same man who left. Rick found his voice. You can't prove anything. Cole smiled and showed him another tablet, this one displaying real-time footage from the surveillance system in Cole's house. Can't I? Right now, I'm watching Diana pack clothes for what she thinks will be a romantic weekend with you. I've recorded every phone call, every financial transaction, every moment of your pathetic little affair. Rick's face went white. That's illegal. Is it? It's my house, my accounts, my wife. Funny thing about surveillance laws, they don't protect criminals very well. Cole stood and began pacing again. Here's what's going to happen, Rick. You're going to end this relationship with my wife. You're going to disappear from my son's life. And you're going to make restitution for every penny you stole. And if I don't, Cole gestured to the walls around them. Then I'll use my very particular set of skills to make your life a living hell. I'll expose your fraud to every potential employer in the region. I'll send your recorded confessions to the IRS, the FBI, and the local police. I'll make sure everyone knows you're a predator who targets military wives while their husbands are deployed. Rick tried to stand, his legs shaky. Diana won't believe you. Tyler hates you. They chose me. Cole's smile turned predatory. Did they? Let's find out. He pulled out his phone and called Diana. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm with anticipation. Hi, honey. Are you almost ready for our weekend? Cole put the phone on speaker. Diana, it's me. The silence on the other end was deafening. Cole, why do you have Rick's phone? Because Rick and I are having conversation about my marriage, my money, and my future. Would you like to join us? Cole could hear Diana's panicked breathing through the phone. Diana, Rick called out, finding his voice. Don't come here. Just hang up. But Cole was already talking. Diana, ask Rick about the life insurance policies. Ask him about the forged signatures. Ask him about the plans he's been making for after my accident. The phone clicked off. Cole smiled at Rick. I think she'll be here soon. She needs to understand what kind of man she's been sleeping with. Rick's composure finally cracked. You're insane. You can't just. Can't what? Defend my family? Protect my assets? Stop criminals from stealing from a disabled veteran? Cole's voice hardened. You chose to make me your enemy, Rick. Now you got to find out what that means. In the distance, they could hear a car approaching fast. Chapter 6, The Reckoning begins. Diana's BMW screeched into the warehouse parking lot 23 minutes later. Cole had spent the time methodically explaining to Rick exactly how much evidence he possessed and precisely what criminal charges his former friend was facing. Rick sat on the concrete floor, his arrogance replaced by growing terror as he understood the scope of Cole's preparation. Diana burst through the warehouse door like a woman possessed, her face flushed with panic and rage. What the hell is this, Cole? Some kind of kidnapping. Cole remained in the shadows beyond the floodlights. Hello, Diana. Thank you for joining us. I thought it was time we all had an honest conversation about our marriage. Diana helped Rick to his feet, positioning herself between the two men. Rick, are you hurt? Did he threaten you? Threaten him? Cole laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Diana, I've been watching you two for weeks. I know about the money, the fraud, the forged signatures. I know about the life insurance policies. I know everything. Diana's face cycled through denial, defiance, and fear before settling on a desperate attempt at manipulation. Cole, you're sick. This deployment, your injury, it's changed you. You need help. Do I? Let's see. Cole stepped into the light, holding a thick folder. July 15th, you transferred $15,000 from my combat pay account to Rick's consulting company. August 3rd, you forged my signature on a loan against my pension. September 12th, you took out a $500,000 life insurance policy with Rick as secondary beneficiary. With each date, Diana's face grew paler. October 1st, you met with a divorce attorney to discuss having me declared mentally incompetent. October 15th, you and Rick went ring shopping. November 2nd, you convinced Tyler to participate in your scheme by promising him a trust fund. Cole opened a folder and began spreading photographs across a nearby table. Should I continue? Because I have documentation for every theft, every lie, every moment of your betrayal. Rick found his voice. Diana, we need to leave. Now. But Diana was staring at the photographs. Pictures of her and Rick together, bank records, forged documents, surveillance footage from their most intimate moments. How long? She whispered. How long what? How long have I known? About a week. How long have I been planning my response? Since the moment you chose to remain silent while my son called me a burden and threw me out of my own house. Diana's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation underneath. That house isn't yours anymore, Cole. I've been maintaining it, improving it, while you played soldier. You abandoned us. I serve my country. You serve yourself. Diana's voice rose to a shriek. You chose the army over us every time. You missed Tyler's childhood, our marriage, everything that mattered. We deserved better. Cole stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You deserved better than a man who sacrificed his body for his family's security? Better than someone who sent every paycheck home? Better than a husband who trusted you completely? We deserve someone who was actually here. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Cole nodded slowly. You're right. You did deserve someone who was here. But instead of asking for what you needed, you chose theft and betrayal. Instead of honest conversation, you chose fraud and conspiracy. Instead of divorce, you chose to systematically destroy me. Rick stepped forward, trying to regain control. Cole, this doesn't have to get ugly. We can work something out. Divide the assets fairly. Set up support payments. Cole's laugh cut him off. Support payments? Rick, you just admitted to financial fraud in front of witnesses. Diana just confessed to forgery and conspiracy. You think you're in a position to negotiate. Diana's desperation turned to rage. You can't prove anything that will stick in court. It's our word against yours, and you're a damaged veteran with PTSD who just assaulted Rick and dragged me to an abandoned warehouse. Cole smiled and held up his phone. Actually, you've both been confessing on camera for the past 30 minutes. This entire conversation is being recorded and live-streamed to my attorney, my bank, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The color drained from both their faces. You see, unlike you two, I plan my operations carefully. Marcus Hamilton, you remember Marcus, Diana, he was at our wedding. He's a federal investigator now. He's been watching this stream with a team of prosecutors. Every word you've said tonight is admissible evidence. Rick grabbed Diana's arm. We're leaving. Right now. But Cole had moved to block the exit. No, you're not. We're not finished. Diana pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. Please do. Ask for Detective Rivera. She's expecting your call. Diana hesitated, something in Cole's tone stopping her. You see, while you were planning your romantic weekend, I was filing criminal complaints. Fraud, theft, conspiracy, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Rivera's been reviewing the evidence all day. Cole's smile turned predatory. But I'm not just interested in criminal justice. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything that matters to you. He pulled out another phone and showed them a real-time video feed. Tyler was at his apartment with Madison, both of them packing for their planned move to California. Tyler doesn't know about tonight yet. He still thinks you're getting away with this. He's telling Madison about the inheritance he's going to receive when you divorce his pathetic father. Diana lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. You stay away from my son. Cole easily avoided her. Your son? Diana, Tyler hasn't been your son for months. He's been Rick's recruit, Rick's accomplice. You turned my child into a criminal. The weight of her actions seemed to hit Diana all at once. She sank to her knees, sobbing. I never meant for it to go this far. I was so lonely, Cole. You were never here, and Rick made me feel alive again. Cole knelt beside his wife of 25 years, his voice surprisingly gentle. I know you were lonely. I know I made mistakes. But Diana, you could have talked to me. You could have asked for what you needed. Instead, You chose to destroy everything we built together. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. For a moment, Cole felt a flicker of the love he'd once had for this woman. Then he remembered Tyler's words at Christmas dinner, and the flicker died. I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I lost with my son. Sorry doesn't return the money you stole or repair the trust you shattered. Cole stood and looked down at his broken wife and her pathetic lover. You wanted me gone, so I left. You wanted to replace me, so you tried. You wanted my money, so you took it. But what you didn't want was for me to fight back. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the empty warehouse. Tomorrow morning, you'll both be arrested. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation. Tyler will learn that his trust fund was purchased with stolen money, making him an accessory to federal crimes. Cole paused at the door and turned back one final time. You thought you were playing with a broken soldier. You were wrong. You were playing with someone who spent 22 years learning how to eliminate enemies. Cole, please, Diana called out. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out, be a family again. Cole's expression didn't change. Diana, you stopped being my family the moment you chose him over me. And I don't forgive traitors. He walked into the night, leaving them alone with the consequences of their choices and the growing sound of approaching sirens. Chapter 7. The Dominoes Fall. The arrest began at dawn. Cole watched from his cabin as FBI vehicles surrounded his former home, where Diana and Rick had returned after their warehouse confrontation. Through his surveillance system, he could see Diana frantically trying to destroy evidence while Rick attempted to contact his lawyer. By 6:47 a.m., both were in federal custody. Tyler's arrest occurred at his apartment, where he was still packing for California. Cole watched through the apartment complex's security cameras as his son was led away in handcuffs, his pregnant girlfriend Madison screaming questions that no one answered. The local news picked up the story by noon. Military wife and lover charged in elaborate fraud scheme against disabled veteran. Cole's phone rang constantly with reporters wanting his story, but he declined all interviews. This wasn't about public sympathy. This was about justice. Marcus Hamilton called with updates throughout the day. Diana's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, Marcus reported. She's claiming diminished capacity due to emotional distress from your deployment. Rick's attorney is trying to paint him as a victim of Diana's manipulation. And Tyler's a different story. His lawyer is arguing he was a minor when some of this started, that he didn't understand the implications of what his mother was doing. Cole felt nothing at the mention of his son's legal troubles. Tyler had made his choice at Christmas dinner. What about restitution? Full restitution is unlikely through criminal proceedings, but the civil suits will be devastating. Between the three of them, they're looking at losing everything they have plus significant additional judgments. Cole hung up and returned to his planning. The legal system would handle the criminal aspects, but Cole wasn't finished with them personally. That evening, Cole drove to the county jail where Diana was being held pending bond hearing. He'd called ahead, requesting a visit as her husband. The guards, recognizing his military service and knowing the basics of his case, were more accommodating than usual. Diana looked haggard in her orange jumpsuit, her carefully maintained appearance destroyed by 12 hours in custody. She sat across from Cole at the metal table, separated by reinforced glass, speaking through the monitored phone system. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I wanted to see you one last time before the divorce proceedings begin. Diana's face crumpled. Cole, please. I know, I made terrible mistakes, but we can work through this. We've been together for 25 years. We were together for 24 years, Cole corrected. You ended our marriage when you decided to steal from me and replace me with Rick. I never wanted to replace you. I needed someone who was there. Cole studied his wife's face, seeing for the first time how much she'd changed. The woman he'd married had been strong, independent, capable of handling his deployments with grace. This woman was weak, manipulative, willing to destroy everything rather than admit her needs. Diana, if you had told me you were lonely, I would have taken early retirement. If you had said you needed more support, I would have found a way to provide it. If you had asked for help, I would have moved heaven and earth to give it to you. Tears streamed down Diana's face. I know that now. But it felt like you loved the army more than us. I served the army. I loved you. There's a difference. Cole leaned forward, his voice hard. But instead of communication, you chose betrayal. Instead of trust, you chose theft. And worst of all, you turned my son against me. Tyler was angry about your absence. I didn't create that. No, but you fed it. You nurtured it. You weaponized it against me. Cole's eyes were cold as winter steel. A good mother would have helped Tyler understand sacrifice and service. You taught him that betrayal is acceptable if you feel justified. Diana sobbed into her hands. What do you want from me, Cole? What can I do to fix this? Cole stood, preparing to leave. You can serve your sentence with dignity. You can accept responsibility for your choices. And you can stay away from me for the rest of your life. Cole, please. I love you. He turned back one final time. Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't conspire. What you felt for me wasn't love, Diana. It was possession. And when possession becomes inconvenient, it becomes betrayal. Cole left his wife crying in the visiting room and drove to his next appointment. The county prosecutor's office was busy with evening shift changes, but District Attorney Patricia Kemp had agreed to meet with Cole personally. Patricia was a veteran herself, and the case had caught her attention immediately. Colonel Morrison, first let me say how sorry I am about what you've endured. This kind of betrayal of a service member is particularly egregious. Thank you. I wanted to discuss the prosecution strategy. Patricia opened a thick file. We're pursuing maximum sentences for all 3 defendants. The financial fraud alone carries up to 20 years federal time. Add in the conspiracy charges, identity theft, and attempted insurance fraud, and we're looking at life-changing consequences. What about Tyler? Patricia's expression darkened. Your son is 23 years old. He knew exactly what he was doing when he participated in this scheme. The fact that it was against his own father makes it worse, not better. Cole nodded approvingly. I want to make something clear. I'm not interested in mercy for any of them. They spent over a year planning and executing this betrayal. They deserve to face the full consequences of their choices. Even your wife and son? Cole's expression didn't waver. Especially my wife and son. They had the greatest obligation to protect me, and they chose to destroy me instead. Patricia studied Cole's face. Most victims want some form of reconciliation with family members. Most victims haven't spent 22 years learning that betrayal, left unpunished, only leads to more betrayal. Cole stood to leave. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. I want other military families to see that this kind of betrayal won't be tolerated. And I want these 3 specific people to spend the rest of their lives regretting the day they decided to steal from a soldier. As Cole drove back to the cabin, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dad, please. I need to talk to you. I'm sorry. Tyler. Cole read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Tyler had called him a burden and told him to get out of their house. Now Tyler was facing federal prison and wanted his father's forgiveness. But Cole Morrison didn't forgive traitors. He eliminated them. Chapter 8. No Mercy. 3 weeks later, Cole sat in the federal courthouse as Diana, Rick, and Tyler entered their guilty pleas. The evidence against them had been so overwhelming that their attorneys had advised against going to trial. Diana received 7 years for financial fraud and conspiracy. Rick got 12 years for orchestrating the scheme and his prior criminal history. Tyler, despite his lawyer's arguments about his age, received 5 years as an adult co-conspirator. Cole felt nothing as he watched his former family led away in shackles. No satisfaction, no regret, no vindication, just the cold completion of a successful mission. Madison, Tyler's pregnant girlfriend, approached Cole outside the courthouse. She was crying, her hands protectively covering her belly. Mr. Morrison, please. Tyler made mistakes, but he's going to be a father. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? Cole looked at this young woman who was about to raise his grandchild alone and felt the first flicker of emotion he'd experienced in weeks. But it wasn't sympathy. Tyler chose to betray me for money. He called me a burden and threw me out of my own home. He participated in stealing from a disabled veteran who gave everything for his country. Cole's voice was calm but implacable. Actions have consequences. Tyler is learning that lesson now. But the baby is innocent. Tyler isn't. If you need support, apply for government assistance. If you need help, contact veterans organizations. But don't expect mercy from the man your boyfriend helped destroy. Cole walked away, leaving Madison sobbing on the courthouse steps. That evening, Cole received an unexpected visitor at Frank's farm. Detective Rivera stood at the front door, her face serious. "Colonel Morrison, we need to talk." Frank let her in, and they sat around the kitchen table with coffee. Rivera opened a file folder. "We've been investigating some irregularities in your case," she began. "The surveillance equipment in your former home, the warehouse meeting, the financial investigations, everything was perfectly legal, but remarkably sophisticated for a civilian operation." Cole waited for her to continue. "Marcus Hamilton's background checks were more thorough than most federal investigations. Danny Pierce's surveillance installation was flawless. And your financial forensics were better than what our white-collar crime unit usually produces." Rivera leaned forward. "Colonel, did you have help with this operation?" "Federal help." Cole sipped his coffee calmly. "Detective, I spent 22 years in military intelligence. I have friends in various government agencies who were outraged that criminals were targeting a disabled veteran. If they provided assistance in exposing federal crimes, I can't imagine why that would be a problem." "It's not a problem. It's impressive, but it also raises questions about your intentions going forward." "My intentions? Your wife and her lover are in federal prison. Your son is facing years behind bars. You've recovered most of your stolen money through asset forfeiture. Justice has been served." Rivera closed the file. "But I get the feeling you're not finished." Cole smiled slightly. "Detective, what else would I do to them? They're already facing the consequences of their actions." "I don't know. But in 20 years of police work, I've learned to recognize when someone has more plans brewing. You've been too calm, too controlled, too prepared for everything that's happened." Frank shifted uncomfortably. "Detective, Cole's been through hell. Maybe he's just relieved that the truth came out." Rivera studied Cole's face. "Maybe. Or maybe he's a professional soldier who knows how to execute complex operations with multiple phases." She stood to leave, then turned back. "Colonel Morrison, whatever else you're planning, remember that you've already won. Don't throw away your victory by going too far." After Rivera left, Frank looked at Cole with concern. "She's right, isn't she? You're not done." Cole pulled out his laptop and opened a new document. "Frank, Diana will be eligible for parole in 4 years. Rick might get out in 8 with good behavior. Tyler could be free in 3 years. So they'll come back. Diana will want to reconcile, to rebuild our family. Rick will want revenge for his humiliation. Tyler will want forgiveness and support for his child." Cole began typing. "I need to ensure that when they get out of prison, they understand that their punishment isn't over. It's just beginning." Frank read over Cole's shoulder as he drafted letters. Letters to be delivered to each of them 6 months before their release dates. The letter to Diana was coldly formal, informing her that he had remarried, a lie, but she wouldn't know that, moved to another state, and would have her arrested for harassment if she ever contacted him again. The letter to Rick was more creative. Cole had researched Rick's psychological profile and crafted a message designed to make Rick believe that Cole had connections in the prison system, that Cole was watching him even behind bars, and that any attempt at revenge would result in Rick disappearing entirely. But the letter to Tyler was the most devastating. Cole had researched child custody law and drafted a document explaining how Tyler's federal conviction would prevent him from gaining custody of his child, how his criminal record would follow him for life, and how his father, the man he'd betrayed, had moved on to start a new family with people who appreciated loyalty and sacrifice. "Jesus, Cole," Frank whispered, "this is psychological torture. This is ensuring they never forget the consequences of betrayal." Cole corrected. "I want them to spend every day of their sentences knowing that their punishment doesn't end when they walk out of prison. I want them to understand that betraying me was the defining mistake of their lives." Frank sat back, disturbed by what he was seeing. "What happened to you over there, son? What turned you into this?" Cole looked up from his laptop, his eyes reflecting something Frank had never seen before. Not anger, not hatred, but complete emotional absence. I learned that mercy is a luxury soldiers can't afford. I learned that enemies only understand strength. And I learned that some betrayals are so complete that forgiveness becomes complicity. Cole saved the letters and closed the laptop. Diana, Rick, and Tyler declared war on my life, my service, and my sacrifice. They thought they were fighting a wounded veteran who would accept defeat gracefully. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful farmland that had become his fortress. They were wrong. They were fighting a professional soldier who never lost a mission. And I don't intend to start now. Frank felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. The young man he'd mentored decades ago was gone, replaced by something colder and more calculating than Frank had ever imagined possible. Cole Morrison had won his war against the people who betrayed him. But victory, Frank realized, had cost him his humanity. Chapter 9. The Final Victory. 5 years later, Cole Morrison stood in the kitchen of his new home in Montana, reading a letter that had been forwarded through 3 different addresses. The return address showed it was from Tyler, now 28 and recently released from federal prison. Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I had to try. I've spent 5 years thinking about what I did, about what we did to you. You were right about everything. Mom and Rick used me, manipulated me, turned me against the one person who never deserved my betrayal. I have a daughter now. Her name is Emma, and she's 4 years old. Madison and I aren't together anymore. The stress of everything broke us apart. But Emma is innocent in all this, and she doesn't have a grandfather. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable. I'm not asking for money or help or anything except the chance to apologize face to face. I want you to know that I understand now what honor means, what sacrifice means, what I threw away when I chose money over family. If you'll let me, I'd like to bring Emma to meet you. Not because I deserve anything, but because she deserves to know that she comes from a line of heroes, even if her father failed to live up to that legacy. I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. Tyler. Cole read the letter twice, then walked to his fireplace and burned it. He felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, no temptation toward reconciliation. The man who had written that letter was a stranger who happened to share his DNA. His phone rang. Frank Whitmore, now in his 70s, called every few months to check on Cole. How are you doing, son? I'm well. Peaceful. That's good to hear. Any interesting mail today? Cole smiled slightly. Frank knew him too well. Tyler wrote, he wants to reconcile. Wants me to meet his daughter. There was a long pause. What are you going to do? Nothing. Tyler made his choice 5 years ago. He called me a burden and told me to get out of our house. I got out. I'm not going back. Cole, the boy was young. People change. Maybe. Frank. Cole interrupted gently. Tyler is 28 years old. When I was 28, I was leading men in combat, making life and death decisions, sacrificing for others. Age isn't an excuse for betrayal. Frank sighed. What about the granddaughter? Emma? She's innocent. Emma has a father who chose to make her the child of a convicted felon. That's Tyler's responsibility, not mine. Cole walked to his study, where he kept his medals, commendations, and photos from his military service. On the desk was a single picture. Frank and Cole on the day Cole shipped out for his first deployment, both of them young and optimistic about the future. I built a good life here, Frank. I do consulting work for the VA, helping other veterans navigate the system. I volunteer at the local hospital. I have peace. Do you have happiness? Cole considered the question. I have satisfaction. I eliminated the threats to my well-being. I neutralized the enemies who betrayed me. I completed my mission. That's not the same thing as happiness. No, Cole agreed. But it's enough. After hanging up with Frank, Cole went to his computer and typed a brief response to Tyler's letter. Tyler, I received your letter. I am not interested in reconciliation, apology, or meeting your daughter. You made your choice 5 years ago when you participated in betraying me. I made my choice when I decided to eliminate you from my life. Do not contact me again. Do not attempt to visit. Do not send photos or updates about your life. You are no longer my son, and I am no longer your father. Live with the consequences of your choices. Cole Morrison. Cole mailed the letter and returned to his routine. Every morning, he exercised with his prosthetic, maintaining the physical conditioning that had kept him alive through multiple deployments. Every afternoon, he worked with veterans who were struggling with their own battles, not against foreign enemies, but against bureaucracy, disability, and the challenge of rebuilding civilian lives. Every evening, he sat on his porch overlooking the Montana wilderness, reading or simply watching the sun set over mountains that had never known betrayal. 3 months later, Cole received news that Diana had been released early for good behavior. She'd reportedly moved to Oregon to live with her sister, where she worked at a grocery store and attended court-ordered therapy sessions. She'd attempted to contact Cole once through his old attorney, asking only for an address where she could send a letter of apology. Cole instructed his attorney to inform Diana that any further contact attempts would result in a restraining order. Rick Lawson was released 8 months after Diana. Cole's sources, he maintained a network of former military colleagues who understood the importance of intelligence, reported that Rick had struggled to find employment due to his federal conviction. He was living in a halfway house in Detroit, working at a warehouse for minimum wage. Rick had apparently asked several mutual acquaintances about Cole's whereabouts, claiming he wanted to make things right. Cole's sources made it clear to Rick that Cole preferred he remain ignorant of his former friend's existence. As Cole sat on his porch that evening, he reflected on the completeness of his victory. Diana, Rick, and Tyler had all paid the price for their betrayal. They'd lost their freedom, their money, their reputations, and their futures. More importantly, they'd lost any claim to his forgiveness, his concern, or his existence. A car pulled into his driveway. Frank Whitmore, making one of his quarterly visits. Frank climbed out slowly, his age showing in his movements. Evening, son. Evening, Frank. Coffee. They sat on the porch as darkness fell over the mountains. Frank studied Cole's face in the lamplight. You look content. I am. Any regrets? Cole considered the question seriously. I regret trusting people who proved unworthy of trust. I regret believing that family bonds were stronger than greed and selfishness. I regret sacrificing for people who saw my sacrifice as weakness. What about Tyler's little girl? Any regrets about never meeting her? Cole's expression didn't change. Emma isn't my granddaughter. She's the daughter of a convicted felon who betrayed his father for money. Tyler chose her future when he chose to become a criminal. Frank nodded slowly. You've become a hard man, Cole. I've become a wise man. Hard is what happens when you let people hurt you repeatedly. Wise is what happens when you learn from the experience and ensure it never happens again. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged. Finally, Frank spoke again. Do you ever think about what you could have been if none of this had happened? Cole smiled slightly. I think about what I am because it did happen. I'm a man who understands the true value of loyalty. I'm a veteran who helps other veterans without expecting gratitude or recognition. I'm a person who lives according to his principles without compromise. You're also a man alone. I'm a man at peace. Frank finished his coffee and stood to leave. I worry about you sometimes, Cole. Isolation can be its own kind of prison. Cole walked his old friend to the car. Frank, for 25 years I lived surrounded by people who claimed to love me while planning to betray me. For 5 years, I've lived alone with people who actually respect me. I know which one feels like freedom. As Frank drove away, Cole returned to his porch. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of the wilderness, owls calling, wind through the trees, the peaceful symphony of a world where betrayal was simply part of the natural order rather than a personal violation. Cole Morrison had completed his final mission. He'd eliminated the enemies who declared war on his life, and he'd built a new existence free from their poison. He'd chosen justice